Moving ahead to the now, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, I mean, I think we should. You're right. I feel like I just bashed the Bucks the whole time, and we do need to give some credit to the Heat too. I mean, Dragic has played phenomenal this postseason, and Eric Spoelstra is a Hall of Fame first ballot head coach. Won 2 championships with the LeBron, Wade, Bosh teams, and just continues to pull all the right levers. So I just before we moved on, I think we should also give the Heat some credit and say kudos to them for really playing a good game and having a great game plan going in. And frankly, the opposite of what I said about the Bucks, Spoelstra is one of the best in the league, him and Brad Stevens, I think, of seeing what's happening in a game and reacting to it like this. Nick Nurse, too, for that matter. But, yeah, we can move on. I just wanted to give a little kudos to the Heat, so we're not just pouring dirt on the Bucks.
I've been giving kudos to the Heat for the duration of this segment. I guess, you just like everyone else in my life doesn't listen to me when I talk, but it's fine the other, 23 hours of the day, the other 6 days of the week. But for the hour a week that you and I talk, I just wish you'd pay more attention to me. Just like I wish that the Raptors paid more attention to their opponent, the Boston Celtics, who have a quick 2 games to none lead. And man, like the way the Raptors looked in the seeding games and against the Nets in round one, I think they came into this series a little too confident. And, with the Celtics even being down Gordon Hayward, they are just clicking on all cylinders. They're having fun. So, I guess because at the time of this recording, they've played 2 games where Buck seed has only been one. So is it too early to tell, or did the clock strike midnight on the defending champs?
Well, do you want to take a crack? You want to take a crack at what the shooting percentage was for the Raptors in this game?
27%.
Well, it was actually a bit higher. That is what their 3-point percentage was, but they shot 40% from the floor, barely got to the line. In fact, Jason Tatum almost had as many free throws as they did as a team. He had 14. As a team, the Raptors had 16 that they made. In game one, they were likewise an impotent offense. They just did not do very well. They shot 37%. They had a lot more free throws that game, but the kind of the theme here is that they're not shooting well. Let's just leave it at that. They're not shooting well. Their offense isn't playing well, and that's tough. I mean, we saw last year that they relied a lot on Kawhi Leonard to get their offense, and I'm just not sure that, obviously Kawhi Leonard is not walking through that door, but I just don't know, Jason. I mean, where do they get offense from on this team?
I mean, I think in round one, they showed that it can come from a Norman Powell. Pascal Siakam had trouble finding his shot. You like to hope that it's starting to come back in dribs and drabs, but the offense has been Fred VanVleet. Kyle Lowry's now got the dinged up ankle. He's playing through it. Marc Gasol just looks like a shell of what he used to. I mean, imagine this Raptors team with prime Marc Gasol. Instead, he had 0 points in game 3 against the Nets. Did not score. If he's not hitting that top of the key three-pointer, he's virtually useless down there. And with the complement of big men that the Celtics have with Cantor and Tice and Taco Fall, I mean, the Raptors just seem overmatched. And as great of a head coach as Nick Nurse is, I think on the other side of the bench is another one of the best coaches in the NBA in Brad Stevens. And right now, it's a 6-on-6 out there. You got 5-on-5, and you got a chess match between these two coaches. And just the smarts of, not Marcus Smart, but the smarts of Brad Stevens just showing out there every possession. And he's getting the upper hand on his head coaching counterpart right now.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, yeah, there's no doubt. I mean, the thing that's really interesting in this game is that the Celtics won the fourth quarter. I mean, they really won these games. I mean, that was huge. And winning game 2 is really big. Marcus Smart had a huge game for them, though. I mean, he knocked down a lot of threes. It's just, I have this theory, Jason, that you have to win the close ones. Losing the close games in a series is the recipe for disaster, because there's going to be a couple blowouts in a lot of series if they go the distance. But if you lose the close ones, that's how you get out, because those are the ones that can go either way. If you lose those close ones, it's a lot harder to come back in the series. And I always think, too, when you get blown out, when a team gets blown out, the pride factor kicks in. They come back harder the next game. I think for the Raptors to lose this one, we didn't pick the Bucks Heat. I'm still I'm like, I think that's like a 7-game series. I think that's going to be really tight. I think the Celtics Raptors series might be done in 5 games. I think it might be a wrap. I don't think that the Raptors can score enough, and I really am worried about them. And I just don't know. I mean, do you have more faith than I do in this Raptors team?
Coming into the restart, I had the Bucks in the finals, losing to the Clippers, but I feel like I have to go with one bold prediction per round, and it did work with Blazers Lakers. I had Blazers in 7, but contingent on game 2, I'm going to say Heat in 6. There's a very realistic possibility that we have a Heat Celtics conference finals. And it's not LeBron James and Dwayne Wade and Chris Bosh against Paul Pierce, Kevin Garnett, and Ray Allen. No, it is going to be Jason Tatum, Kemba Walker, Jaylen Brown against Bam, Jimmy, and Goran. And you know what? The Bucks proved me wrong, Milwaukee. Okay, Brooke Lopez, I love you more than most things on this planet, but I'm going Heat in 6, and I'll say Celtics in 6 as well. I think the champs win 2 games.
I mean, we could really see a Lakers Celtics finals, Jason. I mean, that's a real possibility. If right now, if you put a gun to my head, I would be inclined to say we're going to end up with Lakers Celtics.
Ben, no one's putting guns to anyone's head. Okay, can't do it. I will put a super soaker that spits out silly putty. No, not silly putty. Streamer. Yes.
Nerf gun to my head. I think right now I'm worried. I think the Bucks are going to close out this Heat team because one of the things that's crazy to me in that series is just when all the Bucks are out there and all the Heat are out there, there's just times where you're like, oh, wow, this Bucks team is so talented. And there are times where you really feel that. I think with the Celtics, it's going to be tough. I think that's a matchup I like the Bucks in, but I don't know if I trust, even if they make it there, I don't think I trust Coach Bud to make the adjustments. He's just been a little too slow on some of these things. So I really like the Celtics. And right now, I would be tempted to have them in the finals too. I mean, I think that they're really, really solid. But let's kind of turn our attention to the West here, Jason. I mean, we don't know.
Which it's tough. It's tough. That's what I'm saying. Like, by the time we're done recording, Game 7, Nuggets Jazz will not even be over yet. So we'll just quickly give Jamal Murray his due and just say what a great series that's been. But we get 2 Game 7s in the first round, which is rare considering, the restart. And, since we have last recorded, 3 more teams have gone fishing. The Magic, given, the Dallas Mavericks, and the Portland Trailblazers, which, eating my water bottle, because I said earlier Blazers in 7 was dead wrong. So it's a little harder in the West. I think that we can just, we'll briefly touch on, the Lakers and the Clippers moving on. And, by next week, we should have a brand new field. But it's going to be interesting because the East is so far ahead of the West. And if the conference finals in the East ends 6 days before the West? What are this team's just going to sit around for a week? It's going to be weird. But yeah, credit the Clippers and the Lakers for getting it done.
Yeah, I mean, I think the West is interesting for a few reasons. One is, I mean, Game 6 of that Houston, Oklahoma City, I mean, I feel like we have to talk about it briefly, just the fact that, my goodness, I mean, Russell Westbrook, I texted this to a friend of mine, Jason. Doesn't it feel like we're having the same conversation we've been having for like a decade, that Russell Westbrook doesn't know how to play with other great players? He just can't seem to do it. With KD, this happened. And now with Harden, what the heck is going on at the end of this game? I'm watching this game, yelling at my television, get the ball to James Harden. Like literally yelling at the TV. I mean, what is going on? Harden was on fire. They had no one who could guard him. He was absolutely cooking. And Westbrook just I mean, he airballs by 3 feet.
Can we finally say that Russell Westbrook is not a championship caliber player? He's a great stat stuffer and is an electric player to watch. Super talented, super athletic. Chris Paul was on this Rockets team. If they got along, this series would have been over a long time ago. And you know what? I don't know if the starter team with Westbrook would have made the playoffs. I don't know. I just Chris Paul is proving everybody wrong. This has been like a resurgent restart for Carmelo Anthony and Chris Paul, 2 first ballot Hall of Famers who were left for pretty much washed up, and they have both proved everybody wrong. And I think it's more about Chris Paul's play than it is about what Westbrook's doing wrong, but the turnovers are rampant, and James Harden can't be happy. I mean, he hasn't had a good running mate since Kevin Durant, and he was a young player then. Dwight Howard experiment failed utterly. The Chris Paul experiment failed utterly. And you know what? This Westbrook experiment will also fail pretty badly, and I think D'Antoni's going to get cost his job because of the result.
And yet, Jason, I can't help myself but to say, man, this team is going to give the Lakers some trouble if they win because the Lakers just don't match up well. They're not a great matchup. So I think it's really interesting. I mean, I think the way to look at this is, right now the Nuggets are up big on the Jazz. And right now as we're recording, it's almost halftime. But we don't really know what's going to happen there. And we obviously haven't even, the game hasn't even started for Game 7 Rockets and Thunder. But between the LA teams, first of all, who do you think is more impressive out of round one? And who do you have more confidence going into the second round of the playoffs so far?
You have to say the Clippers. I mean, look, I think
for both?
Yes, because the way that Dame was playing for the Blazers and they took game one, and I was so confident in them being able to steal the series, and then they just ran out of gas, and then Damian Lillard got hurt and left early, and the Lakers just had an easier route. And I know Kristaps Porzingis didn't play for the Mavericks, and everyone gave him a hard time because Luka played on a hurt ankle and had one of the best first-round performances we've seen in a very long time. Okay? Dallas played the Clippers tougher than Portland played the Lakers. And, with the pushing and the altercations with Doncic and Marcus Morris, it's, I think the Clippers had to overcome a bit more adversity because they were up against the ropes. I know the Lakers lost game one, but Dallas got two, and that was a very pivotal game 5 that the Clippers needed to win. Paul George coming out with a great performance after discussing his mental health issues and his struggles early on in that series. The Clippers are deeper. I think they're more battle-tested, and I think they look like the stronger team right now.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. The Clippers have been really, really interesting coming in. I was really high on them, and the reason you might have seen me pause is in the Nuggets game just now, Jamal Murray just went down with a possible leg or knee injury, just as you finished saying that. But the Clippers, they've been really interesting because Paul George has really struggled. And I don't know. I'm a little worried about this team because one of the things that the Mavericks did really well was show that a lot of the other guys on that team are just not quite ready. The whole thing with Marcus Morris was not exactly covering himself in glory during that series, let's just say. And one of the things that kind of showed was they really had trouble when the pick and roll got strung out. And when they dragged the big men and some of those other wings out to the outside, they couldn't guard in space as well as you would think they would have. And they really missed Pat Beverly. I don't think that regardless of who wins this game tonight, whether it's the Jazz, whether it's the Nuggets, I guess you could make the case that Jamal Murray's going to do that. But Luka did it, and they still didn't win. I mean, maybe him and Jokic can combine. I just don't think either of these teams, whether it's the Jazz or the Nuggets, have a chance to really punish the Clippers.
No, they're going to be exhausted. The winner of the series is going to be exhausted.
Absolutely.
And I will say, if you're a Laker fan, you are absolutely rooting for the Oklahoma City Thunder. It's a great story.
Oh, yeah.
Chris Paul is extending his career before our very eyes, same as what Carmelo Anthony just did. And if OKC wins a series, no match for the Lakers. I think Houston, if they get past OKC, they might be able to find it if Westbrook could get his head on straight and not turn the ball over and just be more of a team guy. But if the Rockets lose in the first round, first of all, no NBA team will ever go small again without a traditional big man or a modern big man. And D'Antoni's going to lose his job. So this is a huge Game 7. I think that the Lakers will have a harder time with the Rockets if they do get past, but I mean, we could see a pretty short semifinal round in the West with, both the Lakers and the Clippers winning pretty handily just based on the circumstances. Nuggets, Jazz, both exhausted, and I don't think the Thunder are a good matchup for the Lakers. So better hope Houston wins if we're going to get good second-round basketball in the West.
Yeah, I don't think it's going to be great. Although one of the things here, so I'm going to actually say on the other side, I actually was more impressed with the Lakers. I thought their defense was great. However, big caveat coming here. One of the things that's a real problem